Okay, Mike Masato back on the road with you here, the CEO of Staff Driven Dental and the Dental Road Warrior. Just a beautiful day, great opportunity to talk about a follow-up subject to my last video. I think I recently just talked about the two source point reasons why staff bring up the major issues that are with the practice. And I think one of them was communication and things not running right. Well, that's great. Now you know the source of those couple of things. What do you do about it? Because, where do you begin? Because the tendency is when you look at your practice, the tendency is to think about, where do I have so many things that aren't working here, that aren't right here. There's thousands of things. I'm running around putting out fires all the time, and it never seems to go away, it never seems to resolve. And therein lies the issue. What I always teach to my clients is simply this, and that's how I coach them. Stop running around putting out fires and take away the matches. In other words, find the source of the problem and all the other things go away. So if you really boil it down, there really is only 5 or 6, 8 core things that everything else that's an issue that you have going on in your practice that aren't optimal or best possible for your practice is basically related to. So you get to those source reasons, all the other stuff disappears, and that's what you need to be looking. Be able to get to the source of problems in your practice. All right, I'll talk more about problems, I think, on my next episode. But this one, I want to give you a little story that illustrates what I'm talking about. And for those of you who hear me public speak a lot, you probably have heard this story, but I'll tell it again because it's a great story. But this is actually about a true story about the Lincoln Monument. And for those of you not familiar, Washington, D.C., there's a place where there's monuments. And one big popular attraction is the Lincoln Monument. This is a story about the Lincoln Monument. Oh, this had to be back in the 80s when they were having an issue with the Lincoln Monument. And this will illustrate exactly what I'm talking about. And the problem was, back then, one time the Lincoln Monument was having an issue with pigeons. And that's right, birds. And for some reason, these pigeons would come every day and they would congregate on Lincoln. So the problem with that is when birds congregate in one spot, what happens? What follows? Yeah, they're pooping all over Lincoln. So the Parks Commission had an issue. Is that every day, this is a major attraction. And by the way, they were only doing it to Lincoln. They weren't doing it to Jefferson and not to Washington or any other monument. It's just for some reason they were flocking to Lincoln. So people would come, they'd see Lincoln would be covered with poop, it'd be a problem. So what they would do is every day power wash down Lincoln. In other words, they would go out and contract a company at the cost of tens of thousands of dollars the Parks Commission was paying on a weekly basis to continue to power wash down Lincoln so it was nice and clean. And the next day, Lincoln would start the day clean, but by the end of the day, the pigeons would come back, and again, Lincoln would be covered in pigeon poop. So what would they do? This went on for quite some time. So instead of find out what's going on, they just continued to power wash down Lincoln. So one day, someone got the bright idea and said, "Wait a minute, why don't we find out why the heck these birds keep congregating and pooping all over Lincoln?" And they said, "Well, that's a good idea." So the first thing is, well, we better call it a bird expert. So they called a bird expert in. Bird expert comes in, looks around and says, "Hey, you know what? It's not a bird problem you have. You think it's a bird problem. That's a symptom of the problem. Truth of the matter is, you got an insect problem. See all these bugs flying around here? See, these bugs are bringing the birds, which is bringing the poop." And they were like, "Oh, all right, we got to get an insect expert in here." So they go out and they hire an insect expert, and he comes in, looks around and says, "No, you may think it's an insect problem, but it's really not. See this moisture? You see all the roof, on the roof here, all the water that's collecting right here? See all this water that's collecting on the roof is bringing the insects, which is bringing the birds, which is bringing the poop. Aha, we need a drainage expert." So they call a drainage guy in, and he takes a look, and he assesses the issue, and he says, "Yes, truly you have now found the source of the issue. It is a drainage problem. That's what you got going on." So you know what they did? They fixed the drainage problem. Water went away. No more insects, no more birds, no more poop. All right, and the problem resolved. And no more power washing, and no more tens of thousands of dollars of wasted money not to reach the source of the problem. So the moral of the story is, if you continually have issues with your practice that never resolve and don't go away no matter what you do, maybe you're not treating the source of the problem. So you know what you do? Picture yourself standing out in front of your practice every morning, power washing your practice down. So stop power washing the poop off your practice, because every day it keeps coming back. It's like, why am I waist deep in it every day? You know why? It's because we're not treating the source of the problem. You got to get doing investigations and finding out what's going on. And that's kind of what I do every day. When I go into a practice, I don't spend my time going around looking for every little out issue that's going on with the practice. There's thousands of them. But when you really get to the bottom of things and you find out the source of issues, You end up being, oh, it's my entire staff. And then we investigated it. It's not your entire staff. There's one ringleader at the source of the whole thing. Oh, we're losing money in all areas. Well, you look at it really closely, and we look at, you're not losing it all over the place. Here's where you're bleeding money in these couple of areas. You treat this source here, all the other issues go away. You see, same thing treating patients clinically. You got a patient clinically, for a perfect example is hygiene. You keep cleaning up their mouth, they disappear, come back 6 months later, same bombed out mouth. What's the problem? You're doing good hygiene, and you teach them, and you talk to them, and you try to educate them on it, and they come back the same problem over and over. What's the source of this problem? Let's get back to it. Maybe they never got the big idea in the first place. Maybe they never got the education they really need to understand what they're doing is destroying, their gums by not treating the source of the problem. You follow me? So again, take any issue like that when you approach your practice. You will find the source somewhere, and when you get to the bottom of it, these things will resolve. And one of the things, a good thing to do to resolve problems that don't go away on a permanent basis as well, once you find out the source of what that problem is, write a policy about it. Write an office policy about the problem, this issue. So if you don't want to keep coming up, put something in writing, and you've heard me talk about in an earlier episode, if it's not written, it's not so. You don't put these policies in writing, they go in one ear and go out the other. People forget all about them. They're back doing the same stuff. You got a consistent issue, whatever it is. You don't have a policy on like lateness to the huddle, let's say. You have trying to institute a morning huddle, and every day people drag in late 4, 5, 6, 10 minutes to the huddle, and it's not as effective as it could be. Simply write a policy about lateness to the huddle, and what the consequences are for coming to the morning huddle late. There's always got to be a penalty on it. Do the who, what, when, where, and why. Put it in writing, have everybody sign off on it. What's the penalty going to be if you're late to the huddle? It'll resolve. You manage by policy, manage by agreement, not by emotion. You'll get to the source of the problem. It doesn't come back. So again, most of us don't have policy manuals. This would be like a operational policy, or a staff policy you put in place. I've talked about these two. These policies are a source point issue in practice. Policies solve a lot of problems. All right. So again, hope this information is useful. It's meant to be used. Hope you got some revelations when you heard this today, and you're going to go out and do something about it right now. Remember, nothing changes if nothing changes. I just saw that quote recently. I love it. I might end up every episode with that. Nothing changes if nothing changes. All right. So again, if you love this episode, liked what I had to say, share it. Spread the word. Help me help it go viral. Put it out there for me. It would be a big help. All right. So I'll be back in about a week or so. And it's the Dental Road Warrior, Mike Masato, signing out.